All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our special school board meeting this evening. Would you please rise and join me in saying the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we are glad to see so many of you could come tonight. And before we start, I will just to clarify a little bit, there are two sign-up sheets for those who want to have public comment tonight. The first will be considering the operating referendum, which is our sole topic tonight. So during that time, I'll announce when you can come to give public comment. We'll just ask that you address your comments solely on the operating referendum. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll have a second public comment that on any topic if you choose to speak. So there are two sign-up sheets. If for whatever reason you didn't get signed up in the right place, we'll give you an opportunity to still come up and share your comments. So the first item, really the sole item tonight, is on board consideration adoption of a resolution to proceed with the 2022 operating fund referendum. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McCall. I believe you have some comments for us. Or maybe a little presentation.
Full presentation.
All right.
Settle in. So, good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, VCS staff, and of course our community members, both present in the room, as well as those watching at home. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight as the board deliberates, taking to the voters the question of continuing the 2015 operating referendum at a reduced rate. I'd like to take some time to review the history behind the original resolution for the referendum, a little school finance 101, the various people and programs for our youth that the referendum funds, and how we will continue to provide support and opportunities for the youth of Valparaiso for years to come, because that is why we are all here, for the kids. Indeed, our vision for VCS compels us to build off of our rich history of success as a community school and keep moving forward to best serve the interests of our children. As we look at the referendum for 2015, though, it's important to understand the circumstances that led us to the facilities and operating referendums back then. We need to go back to at least 2008. Back in 2008, the Valparaiso Community Task Force was convened by Dr. Benway, who was then superintendent of Valparaiso Community Schools. The task force's mission was to develop consensus and commitment for an updated plan for the VCS educational facilities based on data concerning enrollment, demographic changes, program needs, and the conditions of the aging facilities. The task force met 10 times from March through June of that year, including 2 community forums and the presentation of an executive summary report summarizing its analysis and proposal to the Board of Education. Now, the task force ended up with the goal of creating 4 new, larger sister elementary schools to replace 7 of the existing elementary schools and renovate Flint Lake. Now, this was seen as a cost savings measure as the operating cost associated with 5 schools compared to the 8 elementary schools was considerably lower, while also increasing collaboration opportunities for teachers. In addition, the study proposed updating the current Valparaiso High School auditorium and replacing the current outdated Valparaiso High School swimming pool. Now, as you can imagine or even recall, the community expressed concern, a lot of concern. The public reaffirmed that they valued their neighborhood schools and the community that model brought forth, regardless of the operational cost. Simultaneous to this, though, there were major school funding issues on the horizon. So back in 2008, the state had a property tax problem. In the late 90s, there had been a lawsuit from some taxpayers in Lake County that required the state to change the way they did property taxes, and they did exactly that. But by the time we got to 2008, the fair and equitable system that had been designed was now putting a big burden on homeowners as well as other members of the taxing system. So the legislators in the spring of 2008 tackled the property tax issue for Indiana citizens. They saw $3 billion worth of property tax going from the local courthouse to the general fund silo in schools across Indiana. And so the $3 billion then was removed from property tax and moved to state funding. So now the general fund was going to be controlled by the state, and that money would come out of our income tax, out of sales tax, which we increased by a percentage point, and also out of gaming taxes. A portion of the general funds always came from the state, but now the whole thing was going to be funded by the state of Indiana. Property taxes went down that year by an average of 30%. And of course, that meant schools moved from the stable property tax to an unstable tax based upon the economy. And what happened at the end of 2008 after they passed this in the spring? The economy tanked. As a result of the economy, we had a shortfall of nearly $300 million. Coupled with that, we also had constitutional property tax caps, where the loss took into account the loss that was created by the Indiana tax caps amounted to over $250 million per year. And the areas that had higher value homes as bigger shares of the assessed value took the greatest hit. Those areas would include Valparaiso. Now, due to the mounting revenue losses, Valpo was faced with massive cuts in staffing and programming. Many of you in this room and at home will recall those conversations. It was very concerning for our community. It also eventually led to reconsidering the earlier task force proposal to replace 7 neighborhood schools with 4 schools due to that substantial reduction in operating costs. Again, 8 schools dropping to 5 means fewer administrators, counselors, nurses, and support staff. This leads us to 2015. Having made all those cuts and more, then Superintendent Dr. Rick Fertascia outlined a bold plan to ask the voters to reinvest in the schools through a dual referendum. A facilities referendum focused on bringing the aging infrastructure into the 21st century and addressing the needs and values of the lessons learned in 2008. And an operating referendum that would focus primarily on increasing personnel and programs to provide our students with increased social and emotional support, decrease the incidences of intra-district student transfers, and provide greater depth and breadth in the curriculum. And so that spring, a campaign committee made up of parents and teachers, community members, was formed to educate the community on the need for the referendum. Fundraising completely paid for the campaign as volunteers made phone calls and canvassed neighborhoods talking to thousands of voters. And in May, the community of Valparaiso and Center Township overwhelmingly supported the goals of that referendum on behalf of the youth of our community. Dr. Fertascia said at the time, "I'm absolutely exuberant." And I can hear his voice. I won't do an impression. 2/3 of the community has indicated to us that the next 25 years our schools will be in tip-top shape. And as typical of Valpo, they've done something that will affect kids that aren't born yet because they see into the future and they know the importance of schools. Mayor Costas at the time talked about the investment in the community and how strong schools make a strong community. And he saw into the future that this would make great results for Valparaiso. But then the real work began. Since 2015, we have built and opened Heaven Elementary, which now serves over 500 students. We've renovated every other elementary to have modern classrooms, dedicated STEM classrooms, agile furniture for flexibility and secure entryways, as well as the hidden parts such as technology, infrastructure, and upgrades in the HVAC systems. At VHS, we have touched upon almost every inch of that building, including renovating and expanding the performance lab, the performance arts wing, installing a state-of-the-art piano lab, outfitting our STEM spaces to expand opportunities for students, and updating every classroom in the building while also adding a bank of science and math classrooms to the northwest corner of the school. It has been a long journey, for sure, but our students are now reaping the benefits of our community's investment in their future. As is typical with Valpo, we have high expectations for ourselves, for our students, for our community. And those expectations have resulted in a graduation rate of over 95%, far exceeding the state average of 86.5, and certainly our highest in a number of years. The level of achievement by our students on iLearn is #1 for English language arts in Northwest Indiana and #3 for the math section in Northwest Indiana. Overall, we're top 20 in the state. The high school continues to offer academically challenging courses such as advanced placement and international baccalaureate. Qualifying students receive credit or advancement at all Indiana state colleges. We are one of the few schools in the state to offer international baccalaureate. These dual credits earned translates into real dollars for our community. Think about how much tuition costs per credit hour on campus, and you'll know just how much these credits amount to for our families, literally saving the community millions of dollars through our advanced curriculum at the high school. We also take a look at our social emotional wellness. That was a big part of our plan from 2015. The Viking Puppy Project that was started in 2019 has continued to grow. In fact, it is a key prong to our larger mental wellness supports to help reduce anxiety, provide emotional support, and celebrate positive behaviors for students and staff. At the Career Center, our expansions and renovations have included manufacturing machine shop as well as a production studio, and our alternative learning experience, or VAIL, housed at the old Hayes Leonard building, does extensive community service projects that get kids work ready and also implore their soft skills. As part of our partnerships with the business community, the VAIL also has a work to learn pipeline with Strachan Van Tills and other partners. As I've stated again and again, more impressively though is what we do with our students in regard to community engagement. This is about being part of our social contract with the community. This is what being a good citizen is about. The volume of service projects our students have engaged in is staggering. Whether it's Dress for School, Valpo School's Winter Clothes Drive, Backpack Feeding Program, the Animal Shelter, housing opportunities, or beautification projects throughout the community, our students learn what service is about and what it takes to be a part of the larger Valparaiso community. As far as student opportunities are concerned, we also look at the arts. We expanded the performing arts wing at the high school. We bumped out the south end to add on classrooms and totally redid the auditorium as well. And part of those renovations, we installed that high-tech state-of-the-art piano lab, which is open to all students and is a true measure of differentiation. This is really where the facilities referendum and the operating referendum go hand in glove. That as we've expanded our footprint, we've enabled new programs to take hold to further our belief in exposure and opportunity. We also have our award-winning music program to celebrate. over the years, we've dramatically increased our instructional time in middle school for band, choir, and orchestra. It is now taught every day of the week for a full period. And eventually we'll be expanding our instrumentals into the 4th grade, going deeper into our population and start them earlier. Further student opportunities engage in our extracurricular offerings. And this is really where we know that belonging to something bigger than themselves, our students are able to apply those lessons of leadership, collaboration, and dedication to the greater good. We know that students who belong, students who give themselves to others, students who feel a part of something bigger translates into higher GPAs, more self-worth, and more productive members of whatever path takes them to where they're going in the future. Now, to understand the need for a referendum, it's important to understand a little bit about school finance. So here comes the School Finance 101. So in 2019, changes came to school funding. These changes essentially consolidated what had been 6 funds into 2 funds. What used to be the general fund is now in the education fund, and what used to be capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement are now grouped together in the operations fund. So that represents 86% of our state funding going to the education fund to pay for all classroom related expenses. That's teachers, their salaries, benefits, aides, salaries and benefits, and those benefits include retirement, medical, dental, vision, annuities, disability, life insurance, etc. That represents that 86%. The other 14% of our state basic grant goes into the operations fund because certainly some of the people the state money pays for are involved in keeping everything going. We are working to move more of the state money into the classroom and expect the percentage this year to be 87-13. So our debt service fund was not impacted by new changes this year and remained isolated funds that can only be used for paying back the district's debt. We all have a mortgage, and we hope and we plan to pay down as we march toward retirement. But schools never retire. And so their mortgages are paid down and then reinvested as debt into the ongoing repair or expansions depending on the district's needs at that time. So focusing more in on the blue in this slide, we're going to take a look at the K-12 dollars per student, which is the basic fund. This shows the blue state basic grant. The general fund dollars since 2010. Earlier we discussed the challenges of moving the source of those dollars from property tax to that economy dependent taxes. And as you can see, the funding of schools has lagged behind over the years, but the bulk of the increases has been made in the last 2 years. So we're going to take a look at if the state had kept pace with inflation, Valparaiso schools would have received an additional $1.1 million last year. And so that's the Valparaiso dollars per student. So let's see how they compare across Indiana. Here's a ranking of the state support per student for the fiscal year 2021 for all Indiana public school corporations ranked high to low. There are 371 public school districts, charter schools, and virtual online schools represented on this chart. And you'll notice Zionsville, way down there in the lower right, is the lowest funded traditional school corporation in the state, ranked at 371. The average school corporation in the state receives $6,444, And to make things more interesting, I know it's hard to believe that it could be, but to make things more interesting, thank you, everyone's paying attention. We've listed some schools here to highlight some of the ranges that we have. Crown Point is 341st in the state with $5,946. Our neighbors to the north, Duneland, $6,004, ranking them 317. Hobart ranked 170th, that's $6,338. And Gary is the highest public school system in the state, funded at $7,792. Now, where is Valpo on this list? If you guess 315th, you're right. Sadly, we are in the bottom 60 of traditional public schools. We get $6,013 per pupil in 2021. And in fact, if the state considered us just an average school, not even a below average school, if we were just an average school, we would have received an additional $2.74 million in funding. Now, do you know what all the schools listed on this slide have in common? Make your prediction. They all have an operating referendum in effect, all of them. So let's take a look at the referendum tax rates for our area schools. Now, 7 of these have actually been adjusted higher from their original amounts through new ballot initiatives. So you can take a look at River Forest, which actually has the highest operating referendum tax rate in the state at $1.19 per $100 of assessed value. Lake Station there is at 54 cents. You can see Munster at just under 42 cents, Duneland at 22 cents, and there we are at 20.42 cents. Now, as you know, this is the 2015 maximum tax rate shown for Valpo. This is what we will be proposing on the resolution for the board to pass in order to put it on the ballot for the voters to decide in May. And through careful analysis, the new rate will be 14.95 cents or 0.1495, a reduction of over 1/4 in the tax for the operating referendum. Now, we have shown you the effect state funding has had on our need for a referendum, but another factor are tax caps. So what partially began in 2009 passed as a constitutional amendment in 2010. And so these are caps that are placed on property taxes, and they separate the property into different categories. And so for your gross assessed value on homesteads, it is not to exceed 1% of your gross assessed value. Commercial and agricultural, commercial rentals and agricultural, not to exceed 2%, and businesses and others are not to exceed 3%. And those others may include your backyard sheds or pools. If anyone has a backyard pool, that is taxed at a different rate. So let's take a look at an example for a homestead with a gross assessed value of $150,000. The 1% cap makes math easy. It's $1,500 with your max taxes. And so your tax bill, again in this hypothetical, comes from your town, your township, library, schools, county, and any other taxing entity. And say it comes to $2,000. Well, now that's a difference of $500 that you are assessed and taxed, but you're only required to pay $1,500. So what happens to that $500? It's burned up. It is pushed back onto the taxing entities who must readjust their budgets given the loss of tax revenue from the local property tax dollars. So we actually have a line item in our budget called property tax cap losses. In the state of Indiana, there has been $3 billion removed from Indiana K-12 property tax supported funds since 2010 due to the property tax caps. And so for Valparaiso, what we've seen between 2010 when they were enacted and 2022, we have an estimated tax loss of about $13.3 million. And that equates to $1 to $2 of every $30 of property tax revenue being credited back to the taxpayers. That depends on which unit you're in, whether you're in the city or the township. So these tax cap losses, along with the previously mentioned state funding loss, led to us fulfilling the promises of the referendum. And so when we went out in 2015 and made those promises, what we've delivered with the dollars has been STEM classes for all K-5 students, expanded STEM, world language and career technical education offerings, 612. We've added teaching staff to minimize that intra-district transfers and reduce class size. We've also added teaching staff to support Resource 9 and middle school teaming. What that does is create better relationships among our students and staff, especially during those critical transition times of 6th grade and 9th grade. We've increased the overall number of aides, including our critical COVID utility personnel, who have been instrumental in maintaining in-person learning throughout the height of COVID, when we've been having staff shortages. We've included instructional coaches district-wide to increase collaboration and proficiencies among our staff. We've added an additional guidance counselor and dean of students in order to decrease those student caseloads and ratios to better form relationships and targeted communication. We've staffed an independent alternative school for secondary students, additional nursing hours, additional resource officer. We've also been able to implement annually our 1% retention stipend for all employees, as well as our complete complement of social workers in all of our buildings, which amounts to 13 social workers in total, as well as a district-wide behaviorist. But what are we going to do with the future? How are we going to fund or use the funds for this upcoming referendum? We're going to be looking at continuing to manage our class sizes with 14 teachers. We're going to be managing our essential health and safety initiatives, those social workers I discussed, security personnel, as well as our district-wide behavior therapists. We're going to be retaining our teachers and staff, the extra paraprofessionals who work with our, not only our COVID utility personnel, but also our special ed paraprofessionals that we fund through the referendum to supplement what is allotted by PCES, as well as that 1% retention stipend for all teachers and staff, and also continue our expansion of our academic and educationally related programs, 14 teachers, our high school leadership, and our support staff. Altogether, this is a very student-centered plan. We're talking about 30 full-time teachers, multiple support staff, and that continued retention bonus for all teachers and staff. So we want to take a look at what the impact will be on our taxpayers. So coming up on your screen now is the Valparaiso tax rate history. You'll see that since 2016, the yellow represents the traditional tax rate, and then the gold is the referendum tax rate. And we have continued to lower the tax rate overall to its lowest point since 2017 at 1.092. And we've done that by being both fiscally responsible and also maintaining those programs and staffing for students. So I want to take a look at what the ballot looked like in 2015. And you'll notice that we had the 7 calendar years, which brings us to 2022, a max tax rate of 0.2042, as well as the reasons for engaging in this, which was maintaining educational services and restoring teaching positions. For the 2022 ballot, it looks a little bit different. There's a lot more words. And so I want to highlight what the Valparaiso Community Schools will be putting on the ballot, which is underlined. Anything that is not underlined is what is legally required to have on the ballot. So again, we're now able to ask for the extension of 8 years, and it is for the purposes of managing class sizes and essential health and safety initiatives, retaining teachers and staff, funding academic and educationally related programs, and changing the maximum operating referendum tax levy fund rate from 0.2042 down to 0.1495 per $100 of assessed valuation. Now, the percentages will actually be certified by the governmental organization responsible to do that. And so those are some of the technical methodologies that will be examined and hopefully further fleshed out to have a good relation with what exactly that tax went up by for our taxpayers. Although it says 23.4%, that is based on a different methodology than what was actually attended to at the time. But it's important to understand what the new tax rate and how that will impact the homeowners of Valparaiso and the other people who are taxed. So we are proposing a 0.1495 per $100 of net assessed value. Now, if you take a home with an assessed value of $100,000, it is not just taking 0.1495 and thinking that it's going to be $149.50 of taxes. When you break down your tax bill, what happens is that everybody with a homestead has their gross assessed value deducted by $45,000. Then a supplemental deduction of 35% is also taken off of that assessed value. And then those with a mortgage are able to claim, get the mortgage deduction of $3,000 off of the assessed value. And about 80% of our homeowners receive that. That equals your net assessed value of $32,750. You divide by 100, multiply by 0.1495, and so the yearly impact is actually $48.96 per year. And because most people pay their taxes through their mortgage, we apply it on a per month basis, so it would be $4.08 per month as that impact on a $100,000 home. Now, of course, there are homes that are assessed at much larger values. And so the median, again, the median assessed value home in Center Township is actually $237,500. And so when you take that same methodology, what you'll find is that the annual impact is $182.58, with the monthly impact for that $237,500 assessed value home as a $15.21 monthly impact. Now this, when compared to the 2015 referendum, is not a tax increase. In fact, when taking the median assessed value at a 0.2042 rate from 2015 and comparing it to the 0.1495 rate for the 2022, what we see is that there is actually a reduction of about $67 on an annual basis, or $5.57 on a monthly basis. And so again, taking a look at that tax rate history that I showed you a few minutes ago, this means that we will be moving lower and lower with a projected tax rate of another 3 cents lower to 1.06 as a tax rate. And we'll be able to do this while still maintaining that investment in our community's youth. And this is, again, why we're here. This is what our vision statement compels us to do, that we provide opportunities for students and their well-being. And so the referendum in 2022 will allow us to do just that for the coming years. That's why we are presenting it tonight for your consideration, to put it on the ballot and take it to the voters of Center Township.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McCall, for a very informative and thorough presentation about the operating referendum, and also appreciate the walk through history. Very nice to see all the progress that has been made on our physical facilities as well as academically in our various schools. Do you have the sign-up sheet?
We do.
Oh, there it is.
We also have here Jeff Falkenbush, who will talk a little bit about the process that we will engage in. Mr. Bonnick, where would you like Mr. Falkenbush? At that podium? And all other public speakers tonight will be at that podium tonight?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McCall. Mr. President, members of the board, Jeff Quackenbush with Barnes & Thornburg here with you this evening. The resolution that is in your board packet does several things, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have after the public comment as you consider the resolution. But primarily it does, first of all, establish the needs that have been identified by Dr. McCall as being those needs still need to be addressed from both a program standpoint and also a fiscal revenue standpoint, that those fiscal revenues are a shortfall, and therefore you need to adapt and adopt the resolution in order to bring those up to cover today's dollars that are needed for those additional programs. In addition, it approves the public question that was presented on the screen this evening. Thirdly, it adopts the revenue spending plan that was on the screen that broke out the 4 different categories there that you had. And then finally, it authorizes the superintendent of the school corporation, the chief financial officer, and any member of the board to take any and all actions necessary to present this to the state for approval, and then finally to present it to the county council and to the county election board to get it onto the agenda for the May 3rd referendum. If you approve this resolution this evening, we will then file the resolution along with the certification of the percentages from the county auditor on the original tax increases with the Department of Local Government Finance tomorrow. They then have up to 10 days to consider and approve the resolution as presented, as well as the public question. If they approve that, which we believe they will based on our prior communications with them, we would then file that approval along with another copy of the resolution to the county election board and to the county auditor on behalf of the county council. Those final actions have to take place no later than noon on February 23rd. So that's why we're having this meeting this evening, to be able to get that on the May 3rd ballot. At that point in time, once it gets on the ballot, we would be in contact with the county election board to review the draft of the ballot form. And then finally, we would then assist you, guiding you through any questions you may have regarding the public referendum and the process after that point in time. So with that, that's the resolution in summary form, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have as we get to the point later in the meeting when you actually consider the resolution by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Quackenbush, for that overview. Okay, I'd just like to remind everyone that tonight there's going to be 2 public participations. The first one, we want you to speak just to the question of the operating referendum. And just as a reminder to the patrons of the Valparaiso Community Schools, you'll be given 3 minutes to give the board comments on this operating referendum issue. You are reminded decorum is expected and discussions, charges, and complaints involving personnel, litigation, and student discipline will not be permitted. We expect you to address your comments to the board and not to the audience. Patrons in attendance are asked not to provide any comments or remarks during the speaker's address or afterwards, including any applause. So this is your opportunity to provide information to the board and not to enter into a debate or personal attacks. We are Valpo, and we expect comments to be done with this in mind. And if you're not able to follow these guidelines, you'll be asked to leave the meeting. So with that, I think we're ready to begin public comment on the operating referendum.
Well, we have several speakers here tonight. As is our custom, I'll read off the person who is up on deck and in the hole, so you can be prepared. Up first, we have Stephanie Pals, and Jenny Bernard, and then Brian Williams.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Pals, and I just have a question about the consultant. If you would be willing to let us know how much the consultant cost, and if you would be willing to let the contract become public so that we can view the contract. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And
just forgive us being a little slower. I want to make sure we get any questions written down so that we can answer them either at the end, or if it takes some research, then we can answer them at a future date. So, no, you're ready. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jenny. Thank you.
I only have one question. I just want to know how much money did the Valparaiso Community Schools receive in state funding for both this current year and our previous 2 years?
And which one?
I want to know how much money did Valpo receive in state funding for both the current and previous 2 school years? Thank you.
thank you.
And was that the previous 2 school years?
Yes.
So 3 years total?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Williams, and then Mr. Foster, and then Jessica Jepson.
Why are you asking us? It's the job of the state legislature of Indiana to fund public education. You are telling the taxpayers of Valparaiso that the state lawmakers are not doing their job. Why don't you tell them that?
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Foster, then Jessica Jepson, then Annie Schoenfeld.
Interestingly, I had some different ideas written down, and Dr. McCall covered a whole lot of it already. But while I was watching his presentation, I thought back to that first popcorn parade after we had passed the referenda, and I remember in my Valpo shirt walking with a huge drove of, teachers and support staff and administrators, and thanking the community and thinking what a wonderful feeling I had being a lifelong Valpo resident, someone who grew up and went through the public schools, went to a little school called Bonta, and then had to switch to the big scary school called Central that's really not so big and scary anymore. But being in a community that was able to look forward, think of how to best support the students. And that day when we passed the referenda and then walked in the parade to thank was amazing. And now I look back as a teacher of the last few years and think, you know what? What would the past couple of years have been had we not had buildings that had been redone, new HVACs, safer for the kids and the staff and so on to be in? What if we had not passed, this forward-thinking idea of having, you know, the social workers and guidance to help have the kids be in the right mind in these difficult times that we did not foresee, but we at least saw ahead that that was a support that's needed. Full-time nursing to make sure that the kids are healthy. Instructional coaches to make sure that those teachers who might be a little older and less familiar with technology could on the fly figure out dual platform synchronous learning. I can't even believe I said that in one sentence. And be able to support our students and our community in that kind of way. So one, a huge thank you the first time around, because not only was it the right thing to do at the time, but it has paid even bigger dividends than I could have imagined. But to keep that going and keep that support in place is so vital, because we don't know what's around the corner, but we do know that supporting our kids, having them be in the right place, mentally, physically, having enrichment through the STEM program, all those things have been huge. And so to keep that going is essential to us being that wonderful relationship of community and schools supporting each other. So obviously I would be in favor of continuing that support.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. And if you will note, on the wall behind you is the picture of the Popcorn Festival where we were all together celebrating results of the referendum. Ms. Jepson.
Yes. Jessica Jepson, 1259 Sherwood Drive. Thank you very much for doing this. We've been asking for it. Going through the entire process, I was taking notes the entire time. Kind of brought me back to how I even came to Valpo through the marine biology program with COIL. And then I started chaperoning all the trips with Maryville and Lake Central and stuff back in the day because of what you guys do and be able to invest in those programs. So one of the questions I have is, and it's not just for the school board, do we have access to financial statements to be able to ask questions? I think a lot of us here, want to see the transparency of where every single dollar and penny is going to be good stewards of our money, especially our household that was hit really hard when the pandemic, the first 6 months, we lost 2/3 of our household income that we have to dig out of now. So we have to watch every single dime and penny. So can we have access to that? How can we be more involved to ask the questions? Is there a possibility, there's so much instability, the last 2 years has been so unstable for so many families. We don't know what the future looks like. We have the truckers, and God bless them, that are gonna try and shut down the Super Bowl and protest. Our supply chains, we have no idea what the future holds. I would love to see, I would give more money than what we're doing now to the referendum once things can stabilize. So is there an option to renew at the way you guys want to do for 1 to 2 years and then propose even boosting up? Because we don't know what the future of school is going to look like for these kids. School's changing. Can we put some type of plan in place to really look at where school is headed in the future instead of just sitting at a desk 8 hours a day? How can we start engaging these kids differently and then maybe put an even more robust plan after 1 to 2 years, and give the community time to recover, become more certain and so forth, even with their own household finances, instead of locking into something for 8 years. So, oh, I brought my mathematician husband. All the math was correct. Is it right? Is it right? So I didn't have to sit there and jot things down. So thank you, Jim. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Jepson.
We have Annie Schoenfeld, then Natalie Thorgren, and then John Sutt.
Hello, good evening. My name is Annie Schoenfeld, 902 Chicago Street. I'm also the president of the Valparaiso Teachers Association. I want to start with thank you, Dr. McCall, for such a very detailed presentation, and I really mean that. Love good presentation. I just want to say that I personally love working and living in a community that just cares so much about education. Dr. McCall talked a lot about what I was going to talk about, but it was 7 years ago that our community voted really overwhelmingly, not just for one referenda, but for two. You know, 7 years ago, I did not have 2 children, and now I do. And it's just really amazing that I have been able to see firsthand the amazing programming that we are able to do here in Valpo. And I just look so forward to my little kids seeing that in just a couple years. So I'm here tonight to ask for your support again. You know, we're ready. And we were out there 7 years ago knocking on doors and putting signs in yards. And, you know, I, for one, am ready to do that again. So thank you, and we ask for your support.
Thank you.
Natalie Thorgren, John Sutt, then Jim Jepson.
Hi, Natalie Thorgren, 3005 Campbell Street. I am also one of the teachers who was hired to teach elementary STEM after the passing of the last referendum. And I just want to say thank you for considering this move to go forward again. My colleagues and I are able to see firsthand every day how important these tax dollars are for our students and our families, and we really appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Thorgren.
Mr. Sutt.
Good evening. All right, this evening I'm going to discuss, right now, I do not feel that this is the proper time to ask the community for more money. Now I'm going to get a lot of flack from that, from people outside here saying you don't support the kids, the teachers. Ridiculous. I do. But I said we've gotten the SR 1, 2, and 3 money. I don't know the exact total, but it's in the millions. $6-7 million. I think that's, you know, you can tell me later then, but it's 5 million. It's close. It's millions. I know that. The state funding was not cut during COVID when they talked initially about they were going to cut funding because we learned everything online. And they were going to, but they didn't do that. So that's more money. I don't know if this number is correct. The $50,000 number for the consultant, which we're talking about, his strategy, just like the last time, was to put it on the primary, because this was even in the meetings where there's less people statistically voting on those times. I don't like that. I want it to be more education out there, because this is, some of this stuff, not everybody's aware of this is going on. This is the first time that I've really seen more detail about what you guys are asking. I don't even know what the total number you're going to need for the next 8 years is. What is that exact number that you're going to spend for the next 8 years on the children and the classrooms and the teachers? And if this doesn't pass, are you just going to shut all of them down? I'm assuming you're going to find a way to fund these, right? So there's that. So after the 8 year mark, so you're going to extend it for 8 years. At that point, are you going to ask another referendum on top of all the new building for the homes downtown and out the northwest of the community that will all go to Cooks? Are you guys going to need another building referendum several years to come? Because that's going to be more money that they're going to ask for the community. Because when they did that first referendum for the building, I was vocal about certain schools, especially Central, being downsized to one classroom. I didn't agree with that, and I think they're underbuilt heavily at the time. Just my opinion. Okay, and then one more. So I just want, I said when you take it to the voters, don't put it on the May referendum. Don't put it in May if you're going to do this. I still don't want it to do it this year. Now is not the right time. In a couple years from now, because there are families that are still struggling. Put it in November if you're going to do it, and get more time out to the public so people are more aware of what's going on, because there are a lot of people in the community that have no idea that this is going on. There's a lot of people that don't have kids in the schools that have no clue about this. So that's my suggestion. Wait, because you're going to come back to the well again for more money down the road, which we support children and the schools and the teachers, but I want you to be fiscally responsible with the money that you are getting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saad.
John, do you have a list of those questions? Or I just want to make sure I got all of them as you were speaking. If not, we'll play back the tape and just make sure we get them all. Okay, thank you. Jim Jepson and then Ray Smedley.
Jim Jepson, also 1259 Sherwood Drive. Yes, the math is fine. No, it's not what I was here for, though. I wanted to kind of take a slight detour and just say that the last time the referendum came through, and I've worked with Fratasha both directly and indirectly, or have worked with him, and he was truly one of the greatest champions of children I've ever met in my life. Where I work right now, the entire half of the building that I work in was his concept. And so I just want to say that when he was organizing all this the first time around in 2015, I think he did a phenomenal job. I know Mr. Barrett, we had talked about it back then. We were coaching little kids in baseball then, but we were talking about it then. I think that the vast majority of everything that he sought out, to the best of my knowledge, has been happening. Immediately after the referendum, when he was talking about the possible redistricting, and this was maybe 17 or 18, and only a few kids ended up really moving. I was present for that too, and I appreciated him for that. So what I really want to say is just, if this thing goes through, and whether it's now or in the November, I hope that you guys will take it upon yourselves to live up to that same expectation, because he was one of the greatest humans in our area for children. And so I hope that we live up to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jepson. And I wholeheartedly agree with your comment about Dr. Fratasha. He was a fine advocate for children in our school system.
Ray Smedley.
I just have one question. What are the state rules governing what the VCS school board and employees can or cannot say to promote the referendum in the run-up to the election?
What employees and school board?
Yes, what you guys can say. Promote the referendum.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smedley. Do we have any others tonight?
Anybody else who may have signed up on the wrong form and want to speak to the referendum?
I got one more comment on the first one, if I could.
On the operating referendum?
Yes. Brief.
Is it brief? All right, all right.
Compared to my speech, John, is it brief?
I had to mention too that I said with some of the referendum money the last time, with a little bit of irritation was with the whole superintendent, how that whole thing went down with Dr. Locke and Berta and all this stuff. And I said I just didn't like how some of that money was just spent. Right? I said we got to be very careful with our tax dollars funding the schools and that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else who didn't sign up for this first part? All right, not seeing anyone else, I think we will close public comments. Before we get to school board comments, Dr. McCall, you need a few more minutes, or are you ready to maybe address some of these questions that were asked?
Well, I took copious notes, and I will probably need to look back at the tape in order to make sure I didn't miss any of the questions. And so I will take those that I can answer now and answer them, as has been my practice. And then the ones that need a quick lookup, then we'll get the answers to the people who ask those questions in the future. So the question was about the consultant contract and will it be made public? That was approved at a public meeting and was as part of the public record. The exact month I'd have to look up, but it was last year in 2021, which does feel like a lifetime ago now, but it is public, and so we'll look for it and send it to you. Okay, Ms. Pals? Good? All right. The dollars received the current and previous 2 years, same thing. We'll look that up and provide it to you. It should be part of the public record. Other questions is that do we have access to financial statements? Absolutely. The monthly finance reports by Ms. Qualkenbush at every public board meeting. In addition to the State Board of Accounts website, the MSRB EMA website, as well as all of the audit reports, which are fine-tooth combs, are all available in regard to the financial condition and spending of the district. Ms. Jepson, you also asked about, can we put a plan in place for a more robust plan in the future, that not locking in this rate, and allow for a look at an increase in rate, and that is part and parcel with this. So when we go out to the voters, and should they elect to pass the continuance of the 2015 referendum at a reduced rate, as I referenced on my slide concerning all the other schools, area schools that have referendum, several of those had adjusted their rates upward through another ballot process, and so should we find that there's an expansion of programs or something compelling, then we can always go back to the voters in Center Township to augment that rate. Mr. Sutt, your questions are good ones, but those will be ones that I'll need to respond to in time, make sure I have the right answers for you. Okay, I want to be as accurate as possible. And then the state rules concerning what employees and school boards can and can't say, those will be published as well. So Ray, those will be published as well. But it is restrictive, and as agents of this school district, the school board superintendent, assistant superintendents are those that are advocates all day, but other school employees are restricted. So we'll go over that in detail, okay? And then as the board considers the question, I'd just also like to say, appreciate all of the support from the public here, as well as those who have contacted me by email, as well as the conversations I've had. I don't mind saying that our public officials have been very supportive of what we do for kids, what we do for the community, and the referendum itself. Whether we're talking about Mayor Murphy or the City Council, the Center Township Board, or even our elected officials, Representative Soliday and Senator Charbonneau, they're all, like our public, very proud of Valparaiso Community Schools, the history of success, and the blazing path that we're putting forth in the future for our kids. And so, again, very supportive of the schools and this referendum and what we will be doing with it. And so always that is very appreciative, and it's felt. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. McCall. Before we maybe get to the question, board members, we'll give this an opportunity for you to ask questions, or if you have any comments or a statement you'd like to make. I'll start with Ms. Flodkins, clear at the end here.
We'll start with the newbie. I just appreciate everything that I heard this evening. This is my first attempt at fully understanding. I've been in the city 11 years now, and so I can say that I was able to vote the last time. And one of the reasons why I moved to Valparaiso, but always have known about how great Valparaiso was and is. So I love to reflect on that, where I've come from and where I am now and what I've been able to give my children. Although I can say that the education that I'm able to give my children right now is pretty much the same education that I received. But remember, I am a class of 1993 graduate, so that means I have some years back. But I'm grateful for what these children are able to receive and their experiences. I look at my children and I feel bad in many cases comparing them to other children, wishing that I could give or wishing other children had these same experiences that we are able to give our children here. As I've said in a school board meeting before, I almost feel my son has college options. He can choose from several lists of classes and feel really good just watching how they've developed and evolved since we've been here is grand to really see. But as I voted then and mindful now, I guess those are the things you don't think about being a homeowner. I'm like, I don't want to pay any more. But when you realize where your money is going, your hopes is that it will always be for the success of Valparaiso, for the success of our children. Because as we are forward thinkers, we are thinking who they will be outside of this and how well we have developed our children to move beyond Valparaiso Community Schools. So very grateful. Dr. McCall. I loved I said he had a great time putting that presentation together. All the effects and the bouncing and the colors, but very well thought out and presented. Thank you very much.
All right. So I just want to say thank you to the Center Township taxpayers for the past 7 years of what they've done for children in our community. I grew up here myself. I'm going to be 51 years old next month, and there was no question in my mind after we left Carmel when my wife was a teacher down there where I wanted to move when I graduated dental school, and it was Valparaiso, as I referred to it as the Vale of Paradise. But the biggest reason why I wanted to come back to Valpo was because of the schools. And I think that's why so many of the people I grew up with still live in Valparaiso, whether they're firemen, police officers, the mayor, local attorneys, doctors, dentists, etc., teachers. It's because of the schools. I mean, that's the number one reason why you'll hear from almost everybody why they moved to Valparaiso is for the education for their children. And we continue to educate children in the fashion that I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And I just think we should be always cognizant of that, how proud we are to be from what I call Valparaiso, USA. This is just a great place to raise a family. And I'll put it up against any town in America as far as the quality of the education, the cultural environment, the skills we learn, and quite honestly, the most important thing is how we love one another, how we look out for each other, and how everyone kind of knows everybody's business in a positive way. So this is a special place, and I hope that if we decide to do this, that we continue that tradition of Valparaiso, because this is a really, really special place.
Yeah, I'd like to say that just appreciate the values that this community has. Although my kids come back and get to go back in high school, they did not get to participate in all the benefits. And I just hear the jealousy in their voices. It's really cool to see, because they had a wonderful time when they were here. Then they come back and they're like, wow. It's really quite amazing what this community has invested in. And where you put your money is really what you hold as important in life, where you spend your money. And saying that these kids are important is pretty awesome. That's the values that I really appreciate the most. And then also, as a side note, about Dr. McCall, most of the presentations I've seen were horrible. They're absolutely horrible. That was fantastic. And I do
I think that was a compliment, I think.
I choose to take it as one.
Oh gosh, okay, always following Kurt. I just wanted to say that, you know, one of the things I love about Valpo is that this community is so generous. You know, month after month, we read the list of donations that come in, and it's in the tens of thousands of dollars always. We have a very generous community. We have a very engaged community. People who are invested, people who are curious, people who are willing to give their time. And I think that speaks a lot to our community. And I know that these schools are highly valued, you know, whether you have students who attend the district or you just live in the city and you value having a strong workforce and great, you know, vibrant entertainment and food downtown. All of these things are because of the foundation of the school district that is here. And I, like Kurt said, you know, you put your money what you value. He is a man of wise words all the time. And I think that really rings true, that the things that are the most important to us are the things that we invest in the most. And I appreciate that Valpo has always recognized that our schools and our students are of the highest value and deserving the most attention. That's why we've had so many people want to voice their opinions in the last year. We don't always have to agree, but we always value what is said. So I look forward to having future conversations about all of this. I think that it's great that we're able to continue this referendum, but at a lower rate. As was said, you know, a lot of families are struggling now, and it matters that we're being respectful of that, recognizing the changes in the economic situation. I'm glad that we can still offer very high services and tremendous innovation in programming for our students with a lower tax rate. That's really amazing that we're able to accomplish that. And I'm grateful to the management of money that has allowed us to do that, to be in such a good position and being able to request a smaller rate. So that's all I guess I have to say.
All right, well, thank you. I echo all the comments of my board members. And I would have to also say Valparaiso is a great place to live. It's been a great place to raise my family and to send my kids here to get a wonderful education. I also support the proposed referendum resolution that we're going to be considering tonight for the renewal of our schools operating referendum. It's been essential to our school system. In addition, it kind of supplements our state tuition support we receive to provide necessary funds to hire additional teachers, to reduce classroom sizes, hire additional social workers and aides, and to be able to offer additional academic resources to enhance the learning opportunities for all of our students, in addition to all the many wonderful things that Dr. McCall has so eloquently mentioned already tonight. We don't want to see what cuts we would have to make to our schools if this referendum does not pass. And I affirm that the proposed property tax rate reduction of almost 5.5 cents per $100 assessed value is a significant cut. This is the right thing to do since our assessed value in our taxing district of the school has increased, and projections that Dr. McCall and Mrs. Quackenbush, our CFO, have prepared demonstrates a good plan, I believe. I truly believe in order to have a strong, vibrant, growing Valparaiso community, as many of our elected officials have constantly been saying, it takes a great school system, which I believe we have, in order to meet the continuing needs of our students and families. The Valparaiso community has always stepped up to the plate to make sure our children have the best educational opportunities to learn and excel in whatever their dreams are. And I believe we will gain the support of the community to continue the great tradition of being about our children who are our future. I therefore wholeheartedly support the renewal of the school's operating referendum. And then just one final thought too, that tonight's recommendation that the board's going to be considering, if it does go through, is not to renew the referendum. It's to set the process in motion. It's going to be the voters of Valparaiso who will make that decision come May 3rd. So I think that concludes my comments. Anyone else have any questions before we consider possible action? All right. I think we've covered it tonight. So what's the board's pleasure on this proposed resolution?
Mr. President, I have a motion to approve the resolution for the 2022 operating referendum.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion to approve the 2022 operating referendum. It's really the extension of the 2016 operating referendum is the way I think it's titled, but I think that will suffice. All right, any further discussion? Let's have roll call vote. Who's our, Kurt, you want to take a roll call vote?
Yeah. Ms. Watkins?
Aye.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Minko? Aye. I guess I have to pull myself. That's kind of weird.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, Mr. Center.
Aye. All right, we have 5 yeses and no one dissenting. So the motion has been approved to approve this resolution regarding the extension of our 2016 operating referendum. Dr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a consequence of now moving forward and putting the question on the ballot for the voters to decide in May, also have 2 letters of engagement for the board to take action on to secure the services of LWG CPAs and advisors, as well as Barnes & Thornburg for legal counsel during this process. Recommend approval of these contracts and letters of engagement.
All right, thank you, Dr. McCall. Both of these letters of engagement are included in our board packet here tonight. What's the pleasure of the board?
Are we approving them together or separate?
Together.
Yeah, motion to approve the letter of engagements.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve both of these letters of engagement. Any further discussions? Not hearing any. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, any dissenting votes? Okay, motion's been approved. Thank you. So I believe, Dr. McCall, this concludes our regular business for tonight's special meeting, other than we do have one more public participation.
That is accurate.
Okay.
No one signed.
All right. We have no one who has signed, but I will offer opportunity. Does anyone have any comments that they want to say? I will let you know we are going to have a meeting in a couple of weeks, so you know you can always bring comments. I think Mr. Sutt, did you want to come again to the mic?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One more time to bug you guys.
3 times a charm, right?
Yes, it is. Now that you guys have approved this to go forward on the May 3rd, I believe. Again, the LWG CPA legal counsel, where do I see the how much are we spending on this legal counsel and all this? Where do I find those numbers?
That'll be on our board website, on the agenda and contract considerations.
Okay, and now that this is going to go forward, do right by the public, which we've done right by you guys. Get it out there. Because again, there's a lot of people that do not realize this is coming this quick in May, which again, I don't agree with in May. If you're gonna do it in November. But that's what the consultants suggest, because, you know, that's why you pay them to do that kind of stuff. But thank you. Just get it out there, make the public aware. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Mr. Sutton, are you in favor of the referendum?
As it sits, I am not right now. Like I said, I'm not against the school or anything else, but a lot of people are gonna say that about me, and that's fine. You have your opinion. I think we need to live within our means, get stuff together, and do some things, shuffle some stuff around first. And then when we need the money, ask, because we're gonna continue to ask for money every 8 years.
Thank you.
So we'll never stop, right? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we adjourn, I do want to make one brief announcement. Do you have something else also?
I have general comments to make.
Okay, go ahead, and then I'll follow up with mine.
Thank you. Just want to make a couple of comments about last week with our inclement weather and our traditional snow days. I received much positive feedback concerning that. However, as a matter of housekeeping, we do have to make those up. And we do have those days outlined in our 2021-22 calendar that had been approved a couple of years ago. And so as a result, we will have our snow makeup days on February 18th as an e-learning day, as it's highlighted and outlined on our calendar. This will be part of the reason is that we know we'll have reliable power and internet on that day. We'll have many days for our teachers to create lessons, and then several more for our students to complete their assignments. The second day will be made up on Monday, April 11th as a traditional in-person day of learning. We will have one more snow makeup day in our back pocket in May, in case Northwest Indiana weather befalls us again. And then we can always, unfortunately, add days to the end of the year, which is something we do not want to do. A message to that effect will be going out tomorrow to all of our families, indicating and reminding them of those makeup days that are on our calendar. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. McCall, and I don't think we're going to need an additional snow makeup day. I think winter is almost over, so.
You are in charge of the weather.
No, I will not be in charge of the weather. But positive thinking, though.
There you go.
My announcement is the regular school board meeting was normally, I believe, set for February 17th. Due to some schedule conflicts, we are going to move it out 1 week to February 24th at 6 o'clock here in this room. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight and for sharing with us your comments. We do appreciate, and we have heard your comments, and Dr. McCall will be making sure he gets the information out to you accordingly. Members, are you ready to go home? We have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming, and be safe going home. Excellent.
All right, we got it.
Good job.